Hello, Tom Maguire. I've got a fantastic book to talk to you about today. So this is The Trading Game, A Confession by Gary Stevenson. If you've not heard of Gary Stevenson, look him up on YouTube. He's got a fantastic channel on there at the moment giving sort of advice on the economy. It's not really about trading so much. It's not really about getting rich. It's basically talking about where the economy is going at the moment, how we're likely to end up in the shit very soon if we're not careful. He explains why the super rich are getting richer, why that means that the poor are then getting poorer and people in the middle are getting poorer as well, which is really important. This book kind of charts his journey from rags to riches. So he grew up in East London. He was in full view of the city, the buildings going up there, the skyscrapers, and he ended up being a trader in the city, one of the most successful traders in the world. This is his story. I think it's fantastic. It's really interesting. It's really fun. I think he might have been a bit influenced by Dickens as well in his kind of writing style. He talks in one of his interviews about how anyone who is in this country, in the UK, who can't accept that we're going to end up in economic dire straits or in severe poverty, all they've got to do is go and read Dickens to understand that it has happened before and it can happen again. And I couldn't really agree more with that. As I've said before, this is a personal development channel, but I've started loving the classics this year. I'm reading lots of classic literature at the minute. I've read about 14 books so far this year. Middlemarch, Great Expectations, Moby Dick, the list goes on. Fantastic. Heart of Darkness, loads of really good stuff, and I'm absolutely loving it. And I think those sort of books are really important for personal development as well. But I like to try and review a book that's kind of non-fiction, personal development, a bit more in the tradition as well from time to time. And I would say this book is a bit more like that, actually. It's a bit more sophisticated than a self-help book, and it's a bit more interesting as well. It's got more story in it. But I think the message he's trying to put across is really, really important. I think people in the UK need to understand this stuff. I think if everyone listened to this book or read this book, we would all be better educated and we'd probably therefore make better decisions politically, I think. I'm not going to go too much into the message that Gary's kind of getting out there because I want to talk a bit about the book and then let you make your own mind up. But he's basically explaining how the rich are getting richer all the time. The poor are therefore getting poorer because the rich buy up all the assets. They buy up yours and my houses. They'll give it to their children rather than us being able to give it to our children. The gap gets wider and wider and wider. And we all end up buggered unless you're worth 10 or 100 million or whatever it is. You've got to be wealthy enough that you can really accrue those assets quickly and build and build and build. And most of us can't do that, even if you're on good money. Even if you're on £100,000 a year, you're not necessarily earning enough to become that wealthy. And I don't think the public quite appreciate that. I think they see higher earners and sort of think they're the rich as well, they're part of the problem as well, but they're not. And I think those higher earners sometimes make the mistake of thinking that they're immune to this stuff as well. It's like, oh, I make 100 grand a year, I'm doing all right, thank you very much. I don't need to vote that way necessarily. But they're wrong, because actually you need to have enough money coming in that you can buy property, you can buy businesses and grow and grow and grow if you want to keep up with the big boys. Otherwise it's just not going to happen and we're going to end up in the shit like we were in the time of Dickens. So this story, really, really interesting. Like I say, the characters he paints are kind of quite Dickensian and just sort of larger than life and really interesting, and they're really vivid in your mind. I really enjoyed that. His story is quite a moral story. He talks about how money was the most important thing to him, but ultimately in the end he felt as though it kind of distanced him from his friends and his family because it was just so disproportionate the amount of money he was making. I think that's a really important message. I think if you haven't made money in your life, then you're probably willing to give it a go, to be fair. I think most people are. But I think if you have and you've kind of experienced that, then you understand that actually it doesn't necessarily bring happiness. There's lots of problems it can solve, but there's lots of problems it can actually cause as well. So I think it's worth thinking about these things deeply. And there's another book that I reviewed a little while ago, How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis, which I absolutely love. He gives a really good plan or idea of how to get rich, but he's very honest and kind of says, you can get rich if it's the most important thing in the world to you. Don't expect to be happy at the same time. He says, I'm not telling you that you'll be happy when you get rich, but I'm telling you you can get rich. And I think that's really important. And I think Gary Stevenson is kind of saying the same thing. I think he would say that actually there are some people that it doesn't matter how hard they work, they won't necessarily make it. And of course, I would agree with that as well. You can be the hardest working person, the most conscientious, the most talented, but actually something shit can come along and take you out, like cancer or whatever can happen. Anything can happen to you, depression, whatever. To knock you off your feet and stop you. So it isn't a fair system. But I do believe that it's the best system we have. And I do think that it's good to live in a system where you have that opportunity to work hard and to sort of exploit your own talents and kind of do well for yourself, because I think it's the best system we have, even though it's completely flawed. And I think Gary Stevenson would probably say the same thing from listening to his podcast. But listen to his podcast, give this book a go. The Trading Game, I think it was bestseller or top of the bestseller lists not very long ago, maybe a week or two ago. It's really worthwhile. It's not dry or boring, just about money. It's actually a really interesting, fun story. So yeah, really good book. Highly recommend it. Please keep liking and subscribing. I'll keep reading voraciously and I'll keep doing these reviews. Cheers. See you later.